Are you struggling to play as America? Because you know what, me too. A lot of people are, and it's very tough. It's very unenjoyable. You can see my elos tanked, pardon the pun, quite a lot recently. I used to be like 2100 at one point, but yeah, elo is not that important. What is important, because it doesn't, it doesn't actually change for which country you've been doing. But what I've been trying to do recently is solo queue a lot of America to just try and win as America. And you might have seen the previous video, which I posted the other day. I'll put the link up here. Here we go. Yeah, well, actually, for the first time in a very long time, I was using this deck, and it was actually pretty straightforward to use. I was actually having a very nice chillax time. Now, granted, obviously, the enemy player that I was facing was kind of, it was a bit easy, but either way, this deck is actually pretty pleasant to use. Now, I actually started building this deck to be like a Soviet classic, like a Soviet classic push, which is what it used to be called, where you just have a lot of armor and a lot of Shorad directly behind it, and maybe some RT and AA behind that. But ultimately, I started building this to have a massive amount of vehicles and technical stuff moving across the open field. So when we look at it, I've renamed it the tank first, because as you can see, there's a lot of tanks here. Huge amount of tanks. And yeah, let me talk about this deck. Now, I will talk about the tanks. You know what? No, why not? Let's, for you fine people, start with talking about the vehicles in the deck. So as you can see, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 10, 11 tanks in the deck. And I actually used to have more, but I thought I'd treat myself to one trophy, because I find cheap tanks are great. They are fantastic. They are the way forward. Cheap units, trading for expensive units is the way to win in Broken Arrow. Ultimately, you got to remember that any one of these tanks, whether it be the super expensive or the cheap one, can just get hit by one Russian cruise missile, which is what Russia does. So what's the counter? You get lots of cheap units as opposed to very few expensive units, because cruise missiles are very, very difficult. On the Tu-22, they just rip you apart. I mean, let me just quickly show you. You know what? I've got Tu-22s in my decks because I love them. Look at these, they're bigger than the tank itself, so there's no surprises there that it does a huge amount of damage. Now, back on target.
Stay on target.
Let's talk about American armor. So, as you can see, let's talk about the tanks first, the 11 that I've got. I love these. These are actually super underrated. It's interesting, I did a tank video as well a while ago. I'll link it up here as well. So, a tank video talking about all the different Abrams and how to use it. But let me talk about the M60 for a second, because it is a wonderful, wonderful vehicle that actually packs a big punch. 165mm cannon. That is huge. That's a big little noob tube. You remember in Call of Duty Black Ops around noob tubing? Yeah, this is what this thing does. It one-shots every light vehicle. It will one-shot tanks in side armor, almost definitely. I mean, look at the side armor. There's 250. Okay. Yeah, this goes through it. Maybe not one shot, but yeah, you get what I'm saying. It will do a huge amount of damage. 17 damage if it hits whatever it hits. It can also basically wipe out, or 5 HP, a lot of infantry with this big cannon, as well as the 50 and the M240 machine gun that comes with it. It is a lovely bit of kit. Absolutely fantastic. I love it. I would actually prefer to have more of these, just because they're fun. They are fun to use. It is a very fun unit. You don't really use this because you think it's super effective, even though it is against light armored vehicles, don't get me wrong on that. But use it more because it is just a very fun vehicle to have in the deck. But talking about more serious armor, this is where the early versions of the Abrams come in. This is obviously M1A1 and M1A2 Abrams. Now, the reason I've got the majority of my tanks, like this is the highest median or mode, what is it? I forgot. Going back to, school maths is, yeah, whatever. Somebody write in the comments whatever that I'm trying to say. But anyway, the reason I've got 4 of these and 2 and 1 of the other tanks is because of the ECM. Now, ECM actually works, and it works pretty decently. So you definitely want to have these boys if you can. So Marine Armored works really well for the tank combination, because you've got such a great choice of tanks here. It is fantastic, really good. I don't go for the mill click assault breacher. Sorry, Mick-click is the weapon on it. Just because these take way too long to fire. Let me just whip that out for you. 10 to 12 seconds to aim. It's so long, things will move. And whilst it does a huge amount of damage when it hits, you may as well, for the price, have 2 or 3 of these instead. So yeah, don't go for the breacher, stick to this. The other Abram, yeah, like I said, 30% ECM is fantastic. Trophy, you can live without trophy. The amount of smokes you get, especially if you have all these tanks, is more than sufficient for you to smoke off, retreat, smoke off again, retreat a bit more, and then rearm. So active protection, again, I'm not sure if I actually needed this in the deck. The way I used to have it before was like this. So there we go, I had an extra tank like that. Absolutely valid option. I just thought I'd have one trophy in it just to sort of stick this a bit further out front and soak up a bit more damage. Now obviously this is just a cheaper version of this, so it's a bit of extra fire support. It's also got 450, like the gun is absolutely fine. 9 damage on the HE shell, on the 120mm heat shell, which is pretty good. This has just an HE. No, it's heat as well. Wait, I'm confused. Oh, they're both heat. Okay. Well, this one penetrates more, but slightly less damage. And yeah, penetration is good. Remember that, chaps, when you grow up and become... yeah, whatever. No, moving on. The SAP is obviously the one with the slightly thicker skin. It's the price is similar, but, you know, I'd rather the quantity. It is all about quantity in this deck, so I've actually color-coded them as cheap tanks with the camo. Yeah, the ones without camo are the more expensive tanks, just for myself as well. And yeah, they do a little bit more damage. The SEP system enhancement package is what SEP stands for. And of course the V2 does a bit more with 500 penetration. Yeah, it's a good machine. It is a good machine. These guys are a lot quicker, well, 5 kilometers an hour, which, you know, when a tank is slow, it just means they take ages to arrive to the front line. However, tanks aside, the thing is, once you've got all these set up, once you've got them out in a spread out formation, nicely spread out, you don't want them to get clustered, they work brilliantly. The 50 cals work brilliantly. The machine guns work great. This is just a huge amount of firepower. And you do bring these just to soak up some shells, some ATGMs, some extra smokes. You bring these guys out for fun. They're really good. Yeah, oh, I can get another one. I can get another 2. Even better. There we go. That's an absolute dream having 4 of these available. Because in infantry, against infantry, like when you're trying to clear out towns and stuff, this still works pretty good. Because whilst it's obviously super slow, it absolutely does a huge amount of damage to infantry, especially if you have infantry to follow up on the damage that this big boy cannon does. A good strat to use is fire this cannon, smoke yourself out to protect yourself from RPGs, etc., and then fire another shell, and that should be that infantry dead. You can actually fire it through the smoke as well if you force fire. Now, these are absolutely super duper underrated. These are brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I'm trying not to say fantastic too much because somebody picked me up for saying that in the previous video, but these are great. These work so well. You've also got obviously the TOW 2B or the BB bunker buster, whatever. Anyway, there's a huge amount of damage to infantry. You get a lot of these for 65 points with a smoke with some cage armor. So it is not the most resilient vehicle. I mean, still 16 health. That's pretty good. I absolutely love that. And yeah, you move these on attack move through open spaces and they will do a lot of damage. A huge amount of damage. I've had a lot of fun with these. Again, in the previous video, you'll see me do that. So feel free to check it out to see this deck in action because it is a brilliant deck. That's the vehicles. Any questions, let me know in the comments. I'll try to answer it. But basically, the more tanks, the better. And that's the way I've gone about building this deck. Let's go on to Recon. The traditional one is obviously starting at the top, working our way down. This is less exciting for me. This is where the deck suffers. But anyway, let's talk about the Recon. Great vehicle. Basically, exact same as the other one, apart from 2,400 and a very, very long laser. What's the range on it? What, 3 kilometers, I think? Yeah, good vehicle. Does what it says on the tin. Now, I know I've got a lot of tows with this vehicle. But I've got some speedy ones. These are literally for 55 points. Again, that's a lot of firepower for 55 points. Obviously, super unsurvivable. You don't want to put these things on them, because why would you? I mean, you could if you want to do a cheap flanky rush. I suppose, yeah. You can always do a cheap flanky rush with vehicles if you fancy it. But I've put the tow on, which I, by the way, do still do cheap flanky rushes, because you can chuck these throughout the back lines, big flank, and just destroy enemy, you know, S300s, RT, whatever. These work really well. So yeah, do stick them in the deck, absolutely. They work great. What happened? Why am I still missing? I thought this deck was full, but I've clearly lost some points. I think, yeah, not sure. Anyway, get an extra set of snipers in, why not? These snipers, they're just for lasing, they're just for observation, they don't engage, and they're the cheapest snipers that you can get, which is great. For 75 points, that's pretty good. Now, you bring them out in one of these bad boys, because he's got smoke, which is rare, and pretty good, actually. These vehicles are good for recovering pilots as well. Pretty rapid. Yeah, what more is there to say? It's a Humvee, you know? A Humvee is a Humvee. There we go, sorted. But yeah, these snipers are they're just good for just sitting there and trying to absorb as much information as you can without getting spotted. For Recon, Force Recon. Yeah, decent squad. Not actually my favorite. They've got decent stealth, they've got AT4s, they're a decent fighting force. You can have them in Black Ops for a bit CQB. I'm not sure why you would want to do that. I quite like the AT4 setup. I rarely use them, I'll be honest, I rarely use them. They're sort of a force multiplier, that's all they are. You don't want to use them in a straight fight with any other enemy squad. Mostly reconnaissance that is able to take out some vehicles. That's it, not much more to say. For 70 points, they're kind of expensive as well for what they do, so yeah, don't really use them. Cav Scout, same thing as these guys, apart from obviously you've got a Javelin. And again, if you watch the other video, you can see me sneak one of these guys up, take out one S300 or 350, whatever, and 2 tornadoes. So 3 rockets, 3 kills. It's pretty satisfying, actually. I've never seen Cav Scouts actually do so much damage, but there we go, it worked that time, so why not? And they're going to be brought in with one of these vehicles. Now, I'll be honest, again, not a vehicle I use a lot because it just doesn't really add anything that I don't have already. You don't need the higher armor. I don't need the Iron Fist protection on it, really. I think the only reason I've got it in is potentially just to help me shoot down helicopters when I'm sort of a bit too far forward. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Not much else to say. It's a Bradley. It's a cool looking Bradley. Very cool looking with its Gucci little camo scheme there. But it is ultimately just a Bradley. I could deck it out, you know. Let's see how it looks decked out. Just a very expensive scout car with, you know, you can put the Cav Scouts on the back of it. Infantry. Now this is something I'm pretty happy with. I do actually really like the infantry in this deck. So Cat Toes, not the best team. And again, I do have an abundance of toes because this deals with Russian vehicle spam really well. Really well. It's actually one of the strongest points of the deck. You know what? I actually want to try these mech MMGs. Yeah, I want to try them out. I want to try 2 of them out. Let's do that. For 50 points, it's a lot of bang for your buck, isn't it? And this is what we keep talking about on this channel. It is all about, at the end of the day, it's all about bang for your buck. And 100 points is expensive for a tow. However, obviously you get 2 machine guns, a 50 cal and an M240. It's decent firepower as well. So that's why you keep the squad. It's an 8-man, decent firepower squad. Just adds a little oomph. You don't want this in the front line at all. It is what it is. You can get it in buildings, and that's the only advantage it has on top of the other stuff. I think that's all I can really say about it. You could go for the Javelin, but the Javelin annoys me due to its lack of range and low ammo. So 4 shots here, and you get 6 shots here from the tow. So yeah, and also obviously really expensive. Not worth it in my opinion. Although you do get 2 increased armor, which actually does make a difference in making your squad that bit more survivable. Oh, by the way, they're brought in on an ACV 30. Now, I used to have a lot of AAVPs because obviously if I'm doing a big armored push, they're the same speed as the tanks. So that is, you know, it's a good little strategy, but ultimately, nah, you don't need it. You can have a bit of speed for quicker reinforcements, and that's where the ACV 30 comes in. This is a super tall vehicle, by the way, and it's actually very good for deflecting mine blasts due to its V-shaped hull and the fact that it's so high off the ground. So it's very good, safe against mines for the infantry inside, but there's no mines in the game, so who cares? But maybe in the future there will be, and this will be a useful fun fact to hold in your back pocket. I've only got one with the Bushmaster 2 on it. Again, this is just to provide some firepower against helicopters, more than anything. You know what? Okay, I'll get 2 of them and 3 without. These are the cheaper version. Obviously, they just got a 50 cal on it. It's stabilized, by the way, in that little fire control thing. Yeah, anyway, enough about the ACV. The Marines is what we want to talk about. I love the Marines. The Marines are just great. They are a tanky 30-man squad with AT4s. Now, 95 points is slightly on the more expensive side, but you forget that these guys can do a lot of damage. They lack a machine gun, which is literally the only thing that's wrong with them. But hey, that's why I brought these guys in, to provide that extra bit of fire support, or that shocked effect, which is what machine guns do. Ultimately, this squad is not for fighting infantry. This squad is for taking out tanks, actually, more than anything. Hence the AT4s. If it was to be against infantry, you'd bring in the reserves, because that's a lot of firepower. That's a 5.56 machine gun, some noob tubes, M16s. But yeah, we don't care about that. Even the 13 rifles, they still do quite a lot of damage. Yeah, good squad. Very, very happy with these Marines. They can just sit there, take a beating, smoke out, run away. They work great. If you get 2 of these, either side of a building, taking out tanks, they will work brilliantly. Absolutely brilliantly. Moving on. Mech Riflemen. What is good is that they have machine guns as well. So again, if you bring these guys in a combination, it's a lot of firepower. Obviously, these guys are going to be hiding behind the Marines, but it works really well together. Obviously, I've got some AMPVs as well. Let's stick the camouflage on it just because it looks a bit better. There we go, voila. AMPVs with Javelins and Bushmaster 2s. So yeah, good amount of firepower. This is what, when I was talking about this, do you know what I mean? Like, oh, do you really need it when you can have AMPVs instead? They're so much better than these. Yeah, whatever. It's a reconnaissance vehicle, we'll go with it. Does it even have a laser? No, it doesn't even have a laser. What is the point of this? Whatever. I'll keep it on the deck anyway. It doesn't really hurt me too much. I've got plenty of other stuff going on, but I do love the AMPV. 12 seats. Obviously not enough to fit Marines. You can fit 2 Rifleman AA squads, which are decent infantry. I mean, they're pretty weak. They're pretty pathetic, but for what they are, for a Stinger squad, yeah, they're decent. 4 Stingers on board, which is, you know, slightly more than the Russian VDV Igla squads. They have 3, these guys have 4. But pretty much the same otherwise. Mech Engineers, these guys are for clearing buildings, but their bazooka actually helps a lot, because even though they're HE shells, they still do good damage to light vehicles. So you have Mech Engineers to clear out other infantry. That is their sole purpose, really. But they do have the benefit of having a launcher, which even if it doesn't, you know, doesn't actually do too much damage or too much penetration it can at least still deliver, you know, trigger APS or just, you know, distract enemy forces. But yeah, good squad, and yeah, these do great damage to infantry as well. They're backed up by assault men. I mean, the Marines are backed up by the assault men. Everything here, you need one of each infantry on my battlefield here, because they all just back each other up really well. The assault men obviously fire thermobaric shells, just like the engineers, but also anti-tank shells, which work really well. There's 2 launchers, they just keep firing, they're pretty decent. Not much else to say. They're pretty weak though, that's their biggest shame. The 6 armor does make them a very weak squad. I wish they were a bit tankier, but unfortunately not. Mech Riflemen. These are jump out boys. If you stick them in an MPV and you jump out your AT4, there's a lot of damage. And you know what? One less assault men, probably more of these guys, because they can fit into this vehicle comfortably, unlike these guys, which you can only get 1 squad in. Get 2 of these guys in here, they both jump out, surround a tank, you will kill the tank. quite easily with those AT4s. Like I said, I want to try out these machine guns because they're going to be really good at supporting the Marines, so why not? Again, whilst this has a 50 cal, it just doesn't do that much really, other than just pepper away at positions. The 50 really is a bit underpowered in this game, in my opinion. That's the infantry tab. I am very happy with it. You don't actually... I used to have Marine Raiders in there. You don't need them. You just don't need them. They're so expensive. I'd rather have 2 Mech Engineers squad than 1 Marine CQB squad. And when it comes to standoff, for 120 points, I would much rather have Marines, etc. You know, Marines supported by, again, either Mech Riflemen or small or whatever. They're just... There's nothing that they bring that cheaper squads don't bring already. There we are. That is the... they look cool though, that's for sure. Anyway, that's the infantry tab. Again, it just works. It just works. It's just like the Russian decks, you know? Cheaper is better. And they just work. They just work well. Now, we've talked about the vehicles already. Fantastic selection of vehicles. Very happy with it. And you can keep them coming. For how cheap they are, you just absolutely keep them coming. That's another thing. I don't really need too many launches because... We've got so many tanks. Yeah. Anywho, we're moving on. We're moving on to support. Again, very happy with the support tab. Now, you might have seen what I called the meta was the Marine Special Forces, and you know what? I think it really depends on your playstyle. If you like flanky stuff like I do, that was the meta for sure. Meta means most effective tactic available, right? And that is subjective. That is subjective to playstyle. What that deck was really limited by was support. It really, really sucked and lagged behind with support. No problems here. No problems here whatsoever. You've got plenty of really good stuff here. Let's talk about the Lav. Lav is great. I actually used to have more of them and less of these shore rides. But the thing is, this has radar. And you switch the radar on, this thing is far further, which makes it more effective for what I'm going for here. So remember, the whole idea of this deck is that the armor goes first and these guys are directly behind it, providing fire support. Now, the Lav is great because it rips apart helicopters with its dual stingers, and that cannon is fantastic. But ultimately, I'm not sure I have too much space for it because ultimately, its range is capped at 2,000 because it doesn't have radar, which is a shame. But otherwise, I love the Lav. I really love the Lav AD. It is one of my favorite sort of... well, it's my favorite Lav. It's my favorite Lav-styled vehicle, because call it an armored transport or IFE, whatever. It's not an IFE, of course. It doesn't have any infantry in it, but you know what I mean. A light armored support vehicle. This is one of my favorites for sure. PVADs. Obviously, this is for your AA net. These guys go together. You set them up. All 4 of these sitting on a supply, and they will happily rip apart vehicles, aircraft for days. The Pack 2 is the best pack. It's the best Patriot. It just works brilliantly. Now, you do want the slightly extra, the armor upgrade, even though it's not for the armor, it's just for the extra health points, because it makes it a lot more survivable if a helicopter does a flanky, and your PVADs, you know, unfortunately, PVADs are quite weak against armor. Against helicopters. I keep getting my words mixed up. They don't do as much damage to helicopters as I'd like them to. And I know because the Gatling gun misses a fair bit in this game. But yeah, they just don't kill helicopters quick enough for me. Which is why maybe I should have an extra Lav in here. But I do have these. These are the exact same price as the Lav. But obviously, these are way more survivable. Thicker armor and more health points. 1 more health point, and yeah, ultimately more range, which makes it more defensible. Also, the 30mm does more damage than the chain gun or the minigun, whatever. Moving on. MTVR, that is a troop ferry. That is for 21 seats, which is great and convenient because that means you can get Marines, 13-man squad, and basically any of these guys in the back of it as well. You can actually even get a tow team in the back of that, so 8 plus 13, there you go, that's your 21. This is fantastic. Absolutely love this MTVR. It is the best supply truck in the game, in my opinion, because it's fast, has a lot of supply and can take a lot of troops. Yeah, whenever you bring this in, you can bring in 3,000 supply in the back of it. Which actually, now that I think about it, if I put it as an armored troop transport, yeah, it makes it more survivable. I only bring in 3,000 supply anyway. Yeah, this is one of the rare times where armored troop transport is the way to go with this vehicle. Yeah, for sure. For absolute definite. There you go. Pro tip from Lima, making an armored troop transport. Yeah, cool. We've talked about this. RT. This is a classic American RT. 5,000 range. That is the longest range for any RT. That is a very, very long cannon. And it says go Army, beat Navy. I'm not sure why that's written on there. Not sure what that's got to do with anything, but there we go. The Army wants to beat the Navy. Probably a sports event or something like that. And for the big cargo dump is the LVSR. Although, actually, you know, I wish I could have a Hamitz in here just again because it can bring in even more troops while still taking a lot of supply. Maybe I should have this guy instead, but no. You want the speed. You want the speed. So, yeah. I'll bring this guy in. He's just my supply man. Yeah. I love the camouflage, even though obviously it's got a big, huge red box on the back of it. So, yeah, not sure what the camouflage is for. Anyway, that is the support tab. Now we're going to talk about the helicopters and the aircraft. This is where the deck struggles. This is where the deck struggles for sure. Hueys. We'll start with Hueys. What these are good for is suicide runs into enemy backlines. If you can find a weak spot where they don't have any air defense or just, you know, one helicopter sitting there, one little bird or a Russian Mi-24 sitting there waiting for you to flank, these will work great because they will happily and comfortably take down an S-300, RT, whatever, Tornado. These will take them out. They will get shot down, of course they will, but 10% ECM, and yeah, they work well. What they're really good for is dropping off a squad nice and early. Dropping off a squad, it's annoying that it can't take a squad of Marines, but you drop off a squad on a cap nice and early after you've won the air battle, and then just send these forward just to do as much damage as they can. For 90 points, it's worth it, you know, they're very, very worth it. You can also back them up with Vipers. Vipers are great for when you do your heli-plank. Well, they're actually better for backing up your Super Cobras, which I'll talk about in a second, but they're great for backing up your helicopter push because of the sidearms. It's very cheap, 20% ECM, which is, you know, they're paper thin. If anything hits them, they will go down. But the sidearms do work really well. They work better than I'd ever expected, really, before I started playing this deck frequently. But yeah, they just work. They just do a lot of damage, and they kill Tors and Pantsirs and stuff like that, especially if you have them in a pair. So yeah, good helicopter. If you're doing a flank, these are you guys. You don't really all these helicopters that you have, the American Marine helicopters, are thin. They're very weak, and you do not bring them down the center of the map. Definitely not. You only bring them on the flanks. Cool. The Super Cobra. Actually, I love how it looks. It's a beautiful looking heli. Bit menacing. But Zuni rockets, because they are very powerful rockets, do decent damage, like 6.5 compared to the Hydras only do 3.5, so obviously half, even though you do get more of them. Yeah, I just prefer these. Guided rockets are still a very valid option, by the way, though, just because they're guided, so they're more accurate, and yeah, they just, I don't know. I like the Zunis. I like that they've made these available for helicopters. I think they work great. Tows. Again, more tows. You do not bring this helicopter in the middle of the map to fire your tows. The tows are for flanking and destroying S-300s. All of these helicopters are. Obviously, this one can bring in a bit of supply and some troops rapidly if needed as well. But yeah, ultimately, this is all about flanking. And you know what? You send these 6 helicopters in. They're really cheap. You don't worry about them getting shot down because again they're really cheap, but they trade really, really well, and that is what it's about in this game. I'd love to have an Osprey and I'd love to have a Super Stallion, but I don't have the points, and I'd rather have the extra little firepowery stuff. The miniguns, by the way, have been upgraded, if you didn't know, and they actually work pretty decently now, and yeah, I recommend you try them. I have seen these guys shoot down a helicopter before because of their minigun, which is crazy, but I've seen it happen, so yeah, take my word for it. Right, air tab. This is the worst part of the deck, by a mile. This is, whilst the helicopters are actually okay, they do their job, they're cheap, they're effective, you know. This is where we struggle quite a lot. F-18 is for air cover. It doesn't have a lot of fuel. You know, you just keep it in the back lines trying to shoot from a distance. It's quite expensive, and to be honest, I'm wondering if I even need a fighter in this deck, because my air defense is pretty good, you know, but it is good for spotting enemy fighters, and I guess I could actually just delete one. I don't know. It's a lot of firepower. The Sparrows fire basically at the same time for one target, which is good, so one of them is more likely to hit. You get 4 different missiles firing at the same time. It's a lot of firepower that it carries, but it is really expensive for a fighter. And the gunslingers, they're just slow. They're just slow. They're not very good. I don't know. They don't seem to ever really shoot down planes in my experience. So I don't really see the point of them. I suppose you could do this, but then you lose the, yeah, you'd much rather 4 AMRAAMs instead. I don't know. I'm not a fan. Feel free to change this however you see fit. I'd also love a Prowler. I'd also love another F-35, but I just cannot afford, which is a shame. These F-35s work great. Obviously, the F-35A is better, but you know what? I'd rather have an F-35 than not. And yeah, for dropping Stormbreakers, you obviously only have 3 targets as opposed to 4, but yeah, it works pretty well. You lie low under the radar, pop up, drop your bombs, return home. You will take out easily at least 1 S-300, if not 2 or 3, or maybe, you know, 2 S-300s and a bit of arty. It looks like his helmet's sticking out here. What's that all about? Maybe just the angle. But yeah, the F-35, I think a lot of players are comfortable in using them. You don't really want it in the other setup. The 1000-pounders are decent. You could use them. I mean, yeah, you could do this as well. It actually works. Maybe I should try that, because the Stormbreakers, whilst they're great if you get them bang on target, they're not very good if you miss. And for 50 points, there's not much of a step up. Yeah, the problem, don't have it mixed though, because you don't know when you select which, when you press your precision targets, like 1, 2, 3, you don't know which bomb's going to drop where, so yeah, don't have a mix set up, but we could do that. It's an idea. I think I'm quite happy with Stormbreakers, to be honest. They work really well, and you get more targets, so there we go. Harrier. Harrier is a tough one to talk about, because it is, the worst part about it is how painfully slow it is, even though in real life it's actually a decently fast jet. Prowler's slow too, but you know, Harrier's faster than Prowler, I'm pretty sure. You can fact check me, I don't mind, but the Harrier is good if it works. It's one of those units that when it works, it's fantastic. If it doesn't work, it's absolute dog shit. Like, it is terrible. The biggest problem it has is being shot down before being able to deliver its payload. What I used to have set up, by the way, was the Hornet. Not in this loadout, of course not, don't be silly. I used to have it set up in the Firebomb and Cluster Bomb or Snake Eye setup. The problem is, it's just so expensive. It is just way too expensive for what it does. And the clusters that it has, 500-pounders, they're super weak. You need like all 5 of them to hit the tank if you want to kill it. I've done perfect strikes on medium armored vehicles, so like, you know, the BMPs and whatever, and it just doesn't kill them. It's really frustrating, and if you lose this, that's, you know, close to 400 points that you're going to lose, which just doesn't make it worthwhile. It doesn't make it worthwhile at all. It's not even worthwhile for this cruise missile. This cruise missile is pretty terrible. It's slow. Look, that's the, you know, the slowest cruise missile you can get, and it doesn't do a whole lot of damage. It's a bit pointless, to be honest. If you do manage to get it precisely, which is hard when it's got a 16-meter dispersion, precisely on a tank, it will kill it, but that's very difficult to do, especially when it's so simple for them just to move slightly out the way so that you know, the splash damage doesn't do as much. I really want to use the Hornets. I like how it looks. I think it's a fantastic aircraft in real life, but in game, it just doesn't really tickle my pickle. I'll be honest. It comes with sidewinders as well by default, which is just a bit pointless. Prowlers, they're great for seed, but again, if you can only afford one prowler rarely does a lot of damage, so it's kind of pointless. Right, yeah, the Harrier. Let's talk about the Harrier. This one's pretty good just because it's cheap. This one's pretty good because it has sidearms on it. So basically, to counter it being very slow and very unsurvivable, what I've done is put the ECM on it and given it sidearms. This means that enemy AA is going to get, hopefully, miss with the ECM, and then the sidearms will hopefully distract it so that it doesn't shoot this down and that it can deploy its payload with the Mavericks. Now, the Mavericks are great. If they hit, they are unbelievable. They'll just one-shot a lot of vehicles. And when you've got a 240 points plane bringing them in, it's not the worst trade in the world. You know, all you have to do is kill one tank in order to trade with this thing. So, yeah, it's pretty good for that. Sorry for yawning. But ultimately, this vehicle will get shot down eventually. It's just whether you can drop your payload first, which, again, I'm hoping it will with this setup, but there's absolutely no guarantee. The night attack is great, but it's the same problems. It will probably get shot down. You don't want to stick the Mavericks on this because they'll get shot down. And you can't put sidewinders on this, so ultimately you're pretty strapped for options. The only thing you can do is yeah, there we go, the fire bombs, but fire's been nerfed a bit. It's not as effective as it used to be, and again, ultimately you're probably going to get shot down, so there's not much point. You can make it super cheap though if you do this as just a firebomb dropper. 180 points, pretty expensive for dropping 4 firebombs, 4 napalms. I don't think it's worth it. Anyway, that brings me to a close. The air tab is weak. It's not the worst, but it is underpowered. I wish I could have a bit more oomph in it. You know what? Potentially these are better because you still get AMRAAMs on board the F-35, but you get the stealth and the ECM as well. Anyway, that's not the point of this deck. The point of this deck is to dominate the ground. It's to deal with Russian spam. And I think it does that extremely well. These are one of the most underrated units in the game. I think, genuinely, for the Americans, one of the most underrated vehicles out there. Hardly anyone uses them, but they're just great. Please, please use them. They work brilliantly well. Otherwise, the infantry works super well, the vehicles, the support, and the recon is super effective as well. The helicopters are actually okay, but the air tab is where we get let down. But again, if you're going for a ground mass attack formation, that's the least of your concerns. I hope you enjoyed this deck. I will, of course, be putting a link to it in the Discord. The Discord is always in the comments below. There you'll find my deck and the deck file, which you can absolutely feel free to copy and paste it. No dramas with that whatsoever. But otherwise, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed watching it, and I hope to see you again for another deck video. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.